Good evening from Nigeria. We are happy to have you join us. You are welcome to this edition of Farmers Empowerment Series. If you are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit the notification bell and subscribe. This program is brought to you by Fast Peak Technology, and Fast Peak Technology is keen on improving the productivity and the profitability of farmers, particularly poultry farmers. We want African farmers to increase their yield, to improve their production. And that's why today we'll be talking on how to control pest prevalence, pest infestation. How can you deal with this challenge in your farm environment? How can you control this? We have our speaker is ready, Mr. Shufu Babalola. But before I invite him, we want to meet our speaker. Shov Babalola is a serial entrepreneur, problem solver, innovative business strategies, and creative. He's the MD of SB Fumigation Services Limited, a fast-growing pest control company, the CEO of Showu Solutions Limited, an IT consultancy company, and the founder of Insight Radio. He has consulted with several companies on sales, digital branding, and digital marketing in different industries, including pest control and cleaning. His entrepreneur imprint has spread beyond these areas to the media space. In recognition of his extraordinary business acumen, Shogun has been a nominee and recipient of multiple awards for his passion for entrepreneurial activities. In his university days, he was selected twice as the Entrepreneur of the Year in the Department of Chemistry, University of Ibadan. He won the Most Productive Chemist Award by the Student Chemical Society of Nigeria and was published as one of the 50 most enterprising students in Nigeria by Jazzlin. Currently, he is a nominee of the 25 under 25 award by SME 100 Africa. Shovo has participated in a series of seminars, workshops, competitions by top-rated organizations such as the Montfort University, Polymer Institute of Nigeria, Oyo State Entrepreneurial Fest, Climate Change in United Africa, sponsored by British Council, and a host of others. He's a man with vibrant leadership and communication skills and the utmost willingness to learn. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Shovu Babalola. Mr. Babalola, you are welcome on board.
All right. Good evening, everyone from Nigeria, Africa, or different countries or different states or different cities. I'm super excited to be here today. And thank you very much, Mr. Muyiwa from the FarmSpeak Technology for hosting me today. It's my greatest pleasure to be here to educate the farmers and also entrepreneurs out there on terms of pest infestation and invasion, how you can actually control it, majorly on the farm today, but I'm always talking about pest control, bedbug infestation on our channel also. Thank you very much for hosting me here.
Thank you and welcome, Mr. Babalola. Before you proceed, how is the weather there and how are you doing today?
Well, I'm in Nigeria. My background look as if I'm in other countries, but yeah, I'm in Nigeria. But the weather is fantastic and it's a little bit stressful, a little bit, but yeah, we're pushing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm also in Nigeria, Lagos, and it's a bit cold. Yeah, I don't know if it's cold over there.
No, it's actually sunny. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please, you can proceed now.
All right. So we will be discussing about how to control pest prevalence in or on your farm as a farm owner. And I know majority of people that we're actually going to be targeting today are actually related to poultry farmers. But there are a lot of things that need to be put in place when you talk about pest infestation, when we talk about pest invasion and how to control it. There are a lot of things that needs to be put in place, and it starts from the process. All right, so we're going to be talking about the common pests on the farm, the major causes, and also the sustainable solutions to all these pests on the farm. Well, first thing first, next slide. So first thing first, before we can talk about this particular thing is actually a pest, before we can say this particular thing is a pest or this particular organism or particular plant is a pest, we need to understand that these pests are organisms that are living or growing in an environment that are not wanted. All right. As a matter of fact, some flies are really beneficial. Some insects are extremely beneficial. Some organisms are really, really beneficial to both animals and both pests, or both animals and living human beings also. All right. They are extremely beneficial. So an important thing, next slide, an important thing that needs to also be taken note of is that pests are not pests because of what they are. All right, that's the next slide. Pests are not pests because of what they are, all right, but because of what they do. I'm going to explain this thing quite very, very simple and fantastic because if you look at there are different types of species of flies. All right, let's start from there. We have the blowflies, we have the black dump flies. All right, black dump flies especially are beneficial even on the poultry farm. All right, we're going to talk about that in the later session. Black tongue flies are extremely beneficial in the poultry farm. All right, so pests sometimes we think they are pests. They are not pests because of what they are. Probably because they are fly, or probably they are mites, or ticks, or lice, or whatever. But because of what they do, bedbug, for example, can actually suck blood. Yellow jackets can actually sting. All right, we need to look at all those things. Really, really important. All right, another thing again is the categories of the pest. All right, before you can actually deal with the pest, you need to understand, identify the pest. We call it integrated pest management. You need to first understand that this particular organism is actually a pest. All right, and when we look at all these pests, we now categorize them into vertebrate pests. All right, vertebrate pests are pests with backbones. Examples are like rodents, the mammals, the birds, the reptiles. All right, all those pests in particular are actually with backbones. All right, next slide. So we also have the invertebrate pests, which involves like the insects, all right, the spiders, the ticks, the lice, and also the slugs. All right, those ones are the ones with no backbones. All right, you need to first identify pests before you can actually look at the control method. That's why we have to first break all these things down. All right. Another thing, and also another category of pests is weeds. On the farm, generally on the farm, all right. As you can see the picture of the background, they are actually interfering to the plants that are initially supposed to be there. Let's, for example, you initially planted what do you call this is corn or maize in the farm, and all of a sudden you start seeing some other weeds or some other plants growing beside it. Those things are called weeds. They affect it. They affect the growth of that particular plant that you want to actually have on the plant, on the farmland. Another thing is the diseases. Other diseases that are caused that affect plants. Even diseases, they are pests, all right, because they affect the growth of the plant. They affect the growth of even animals. All right, we have the microorganisms, the salmonella, and all. They affect the growth of the plant. They affect the growth of even organisms on the plant. And all these four pests that were actually highlighted before, both the invertebrates, the vertebrates, the weeds, the diseases, they affect animal productivity by reducing the milk or egg production. All right, so you can have a particular chicken or a bird that is infested or affected by one of all these pests, maybe lice or mites. It affects it, it causes it to be stressed out. So it stresses the pest, the chicken or the bird. It affects it, and it also increases the mortality rate. All right. For example, if a particular bird is infested with lice or probably with flies, if the particular housing is actually infested with flies, for example, these flies can actually transmit what they call the E. coli. All those things are microorganisms and the salmonella. All those things affect the birds. and stresses them out to the point that they become to spread. The diseases, all those diseases become to spread from one particular bird to another particular bird. All right, and it's all these things also reduces their weight. For example, if a bed bug is actually feeding on, if bed bug is actually feeding on the bird, all right, it draws out the blood and also reduces the weight. It reduces the weight due to stress, all right, and also spread of diseases like that. So another important thing that you need to also take note of when you are talking about pests and also pest control. Pests are attracted to the facilities before you can even think about why are these things there? What makes them there? All right, why are they in that particular environment? Birds, pests are actually attracted to a facility because of three major things: because of food, because of shelter, and because of water. If they can find these three things in the apartment or in that housing or in the farmland, then there's optimum possibility. Next slide. There's optimum possibility that they would survive in that particular environment. All right. So you need to first understand that pests are attracted to the facilities due to food, shelter, and water. If you can take away these three things for this particular pest that you've actually identified, first thing first, we first look at the identification of the pest. Is this a vertebrate pest, or probably this is a pest? You've identified that this particular thing is a pest. All right. You look at it that this is a pest. You identify the type of pest that it is, the species of that pest. All right. Then you look at if you look at the species, you understand the species because all these species they attend to they stay at different positions at different times. All right, let's look at flies for example. Flies now we have the black dome flies, we have the blue flies, and we have the house flies. House flies actually like resting on walls. If you notice, they like stressing on, they like staying on walls. Same as mosquitoes, all right. Same as other pests too. They start staying on walls. They start hiding on those walls. I mean, they start resting on those walls. If you understand that this particular wall or this particular environment is making this particular pest survive here, then you just need to do what they call it habitat alteration. You alter the habitat, you alter that environment for them. Then an important factor that you need to also look at is the life cycle of the pest. All right, look at the type of the pest, look at the average size of the pest, then the best control method. Before you can look at the best control method, you need to first understand the pest. That this particular thing is actually a pest. And so we are going to be looking at the poultry pest, for example, as a major case study. All right, next slide. If you look at poultry pests now, one of the major key things that you need to actually take note of in a poultry farm is the housing. Don't make that mistake because the housing is the most important thing that you need to also take note of when you are dealing with pests, with poultry pests. Housing is key. All right. If you're thinking of starting big, please start big. Our advice is to start big. If you're thinking of starting small, they're now scaling. Because if you're thinking of scaling, you might actually lose those birds as a result of space. All right. There might be a need for expansion. That space also affects what they call the sanitation. If the housing of that particular pest is not big enough, all right, it's not wide enough for you to be able to clean easily or for the bird to move from one location to another, all right, it affects the bird. Okay, another thing that you need to also consider is if the space is too tight for them, it's easy for them to transfer diseases. Let's say, for example, a fly infects E. coli into a particular bird. It's easy for you to transfer from one bird to another. All right, so housing is important. You need to understand the housing. We're going to look at some other key features that you need to look at in the housing sector very soon, and that's where we talk about the control method. But if you look at it, the housing actually increases the probability of you having pests. Because if you look at the water can also invite pests into the facility. The food is also a process of generating the pest into the facility. Then the liters of food that you have around, those crumbs, all right, the actuary, the wild birds, all right, insects, rodents, so they also are attracted to the housing, all right. And we also have homes, humans, vehicles. They are also attracted because they can actually transfer. Bed bugs, for example, people think bed bugs are actually just for humans alone, But this is it. Bed bugs are actually a major pest in the poultry farm. All right. So we're going to look at some other pests that affects the poultry farm, like the lice. All right. Next slide. We have the lice. Lice, for example, you have to look at the life cycle of these lice. All right. Life cycle of lice. Now they actually can survive like 3 weeks. Normally they feed on the feathers of these chickens, of these birds. All right. If you look at the feathers, if you examine the feathers of these particular birds, you understand that lice are actually on this particular thing. And the major problem that this particular lice or pest actually do to to the birds is that they affect the birds. They infect it and they make it restless. They make the birds extremely stressed out. And when the bird is actually overstressed, it can actually lead to the death of that particular bird. So, and birds, the mortality rate increases very, very fast, very, very fast, more than what you are actually expecting. All right, the mortality rate increases drastically. And there's this particular thing that you can actually do when you notice, when you notice that this particular bird is infested with lice. All right, first things first, you need to first look at the birds, like the skin of it. All right. They look at the sides, the body of the chickens, of the birds. You can be able to see that the lice are actually are infesting the birds. All right. So you can always apply insecticide dust. But something you need to take note of is that the type of insecticide dust that you're going to be using depends, all right, depends on the label, depends on the particular pest you're going to be using. All right, you need to understand the label, you need to understand the particular pest that's actually infesting or that have infested that particular bird. All right, another particular bird and pest is mites. Mites are the major, most common in chicken. All right, so we have the most common one and also the red mites. All right, they call it chicken mites or the red mites. All right, so they feed on the blood meal. They take blood of on the birds, all right, during the night, and also hide in the cracks and the crannies of the housing. So that's why I said the housing is the most important thing. Sanitation is key. And all these things are attracted to that place or that particular facility as a result of one, food, shelter, and water. All right. If they can find food in that facility, then they can actually survive. Lice might love hot, they love hot environments. All right, they can actually survive in hot environments. All right, so the way you can actually control lice infestation or mite infestation is to put the environment on the cold weather. All right, is to put it on the cold weather so that it also minimizes the rate of all these pests invading the birds. All right, another thing is also the ticks. The ticks is a major, they call it the foul ticks. It causes the same kind of damage as the mites and also the lice. All right, so it affects the skin of these particular birds. They go in there, they suck, and they cause skin irritation of this particular birds. So that's when you start noticing that the birds are actually shaking their feathers because they hide under the feathers. If you notice, you need to check the feathers of these birds effectively. So you need to inspect your birds, no matter the thousands that you have. If one is infested, then it's probability that the birds, other birds are actually going to be infested. So you need to actually inspect. Inspection is key. Then we also have another one we call the chiggers. The chiggers, chicken get chiggers when they get in the roamy grass. All right, that's why weed control is important in a poultry farm. You need to mow the grass. You need to look at the grass and mow it. All right, to reduce the grasses that are in your environment because they can actually get chiggers from the grasses around. All right, and all these things causes distress. It causes them to appear ill and no interest in eating. You start noticing that they don't eat, they don't feed, they don't drink. All right, when you start noticing all these things from the birds, because it takes your attention. Building a poultry farm or probably a farmland, all right, it's not like the park. It's not like building in park, all right. You have to put extremely attention, you have to pay extreme attention into what and how they do it and what they do, all right. Chiggers is another pest. Then we also have this most important one, which is the duckling beetle. The duckling beetle can be found in the poultry housing worldwide because the house environment is ideal for their growth. All right, the environment is extremely ideal for their growth. And the important thing is that you need to also disinfect the environment and reduce litters of food or the feeds around, and because they survive in the feeds area where the feeds are actually stored. And the life cycle is important that you take note of the life cycle because they transfer the E. coli, they transfer um, reovirus and also the Marek disease virus into all these birds. All right. Then the most and the last important thing is that we have the beetles can be found and they can be found in the litters of food in the feeds. Like I said, you can find them around the feeds where the feeds are actually stored, behind pillars, behind pillars of the house of the poultry house, behind the nest in the nest area. All right, we have them at the storage room. All right, so we can look at where the duckling beetles are found. Next slide, where the duckling beetles are found. You can find them in the litters and the litters of feeds beside the pillars. That's why the housing needs to be well considered before you can actually build an house. You need to first look at the sustainability of this house, that this house can actually take expansion, can take more than when you are increasing flocks. All right. So you need to also look at all these particular places. Like you don't just look at the birds when you are dealing with the control of pests in poultry farm, for example. You just don't need to just look at the birds alone. You need to look at the feeds, what they feed on. Like I showed in that picture, the last slide I showed earlier on, that the food that they feed on is also a key contributor of the pest invading that particular premises, the housing. All right. And we also have flies. Flies are also major concern when it comes to the control of pest invasion. Flies are also major concern. All right. They pose health risk both to humans and also to poultry farms and to poultry. All right. They also cost um, effects. All right. Like I said earlier, they transfer what we call the salmonella and also the E. coli. All right. And all these things can have a negative effect to not only just the pest and even to the eggs, to the produce that they have. All right. If the eggs are infested, it affects what we eat. All right. We need to understand when we talk about environmental control or education, all right, environmental problems, we need to also look at the fact that environmental problems they do not only just affect humans, but also affect animals. A lot of people actually just focus a lot of energy into just the humans, but they forget the fact that animals are also the major concern when it comes to environmental control. All right, environmental problems. So the speed of fly production vary depending on environmental conditions. Like I said, the housing, all right, the food, the shelter, the nutritional value also determines the sustainability of this pest staying in that kind of environment. Then there are different species of houseflies. So we have our flies, we have housefly, we have little housefly, we have or they call it little housefly or lesser housefly, black gum fly, and the blue fly. We see these four floor flies are the major flies that affect poultry farms. All right, there are different species of flies, a lot of species of flies, a lot of species of bugs too, and different pests too, a lot of species of them. All right, housefly is actually the major common one because they can actually survive. They can actually survive and rest on walls. They rest on walls easily. All right. So the little housefly or lesser housefly also, the nutritional value also determines on their growth level. So you can't say probably because it's actually called little, it becomes very very small to differentiate them. They can be differentiated by their coloration. All right. But I know that poultry farmers are literally not interested in looking at the species. This is the particular species. But if you look at another thing that this major concern of this particular pest is that where they stay and how they actually survive. All right, their food, what attracts them, the shelter. Then the way of controlling it is extremely going to be possible. Like for example, we have the housefly. The housefly, you can notice them on the walls. All right, the previous slide, the little housefly, you can see them cycling around. You see them moving all around, but they don't rest on the wall. All right, those little houseflies, they don't rest on the wall. You see them circling around. So if you understand that this particular species is the one that are affecting the farm, then it's easy for you to understand the control method. All right, the black dome fly are extremely beneficial. All right, because the larva, all right, the larva eggs can feed on other species of flies. All right. Then also the blowflies. The blowfly, actually, you can see them. They are called decomposers. They feed on the manure. They feed on carcasses. They feed on spoiled food. So if you can see this particular blowfly, that's why I highlighted it, because those are the ones that are actually common as a result of sanitation. All right, if you can see this particular fly in that particular environment, then you need to know that you need to take care of the blowfly. You need to take care of the feeds. You need to take care of your sanitation. You need to take care of your environment. You need to take care of the carcasses. You need to take care of the manure. All right. So all those key things I really need to be considered when you are dealing with pests. You need to first identify the pest and the control method. You would get the control method effectively. Then the last pest I'm going to talk about is the bed bugs. Most people actually think that bed bugs actually just affect humans alone. You can only find bed bugs in on the beds and on the wall frames and all. But this is it. Poultry farms are actually also infested with bed bugs, because bed bugs are actually one of the most common pests that feeds on the blood. All right, so far they can get blood, they're definitely going to be excited. And the way you can actually control bed bugs in next slide. The way you can actually control bed bugs in on the farmland is that bed bugs don't hide. They don't hide on the chicken. It's just like, for example, let's say, for example, this place that I am is actually infested with bed bugs. All right, you can't see them on my body except I'm resting or sitting on where that is the place that's actually infested. All right, probably this chair is actually infested with bed bugs. You can't see them on me when I'm moving on the road. All right, because they can't actually survive with me. They can only hide here. So when you want to control bed bugs in an infested farmhouse, you deal with the bugs from the house. All right. So the housing needs to also be dealt with. So you don't need to spray chemicals on the bugs, or probably increase the heat of the bug. Because if you increase the heat of the bug, because heat actually helps in the control of it actually helps in the control of bugs or bed bugs effectively, the eggs of the bed bugs. All right, so that's our own niche. All right, so it controls the bed bugs, the eggs of the bed bugs effectively. So you can't actually put the birds under high temperature or under high heat, because the heat actually stress the bugs. All right, so like I said, you need to first identify the pest. When you identify the pests, you understand where they are staying and how they actually develop in that kind of environment. What attracts them to that kind of environment, like the food, the shelter, and the water. Those three things, if you can take them away, you're definitely going to be dealing with this pest effectively. All right, and let's move down to pest management. That is exactly what we're going to be discussing today. Like I initially started with discussing about the pests. All right, first identification of the pest is the most important thing. First thing, you identify the pest. When you identify the pest, then you are giving it 100% solution to that particular infestation. All right, so next slide. So we have pest management. Uh, Four things I need to consider in pest management is: number one, inspection. Inspection is key. You need to understand where they are hiding, what keeps them in that kind of environment. Like I said, the food, water, and shelter. All right, what keeps them coming? What makes them survive in that kind of environment? Inspection of your poultry bed is key. Fantastic. All right, habitat alteration. When you have actually discovered that this particular pest is actually surviving in this kind of environment, or probably as a result. Now let's look at the blowfly, for example. The blowfly survives very well, effectively, in carcasses, in manures, in feeds that are actually stored feeds. All right. So when you now discover that this particular blowfly, or the blowfly, yeah, is actually staying in that particular environment, all you need to do is to make sure that that place is clean. You see, before you can actually decide on the pesticides or chemical control, should be the last thing you should be doing when it comes to pest control. All right, pest control starts from inspection. They call it integrated pest management. All right, inspection first, habitat alteration, then the pest application, pesticide application follow. All right, pesticide application follows afterwards when you have discovered that, okay, after all these things that I've done, the only thing that can actually control this thing effectively and keep them away is pesticide application. And the type of pesticides depend on the pest that you're actually treating. So let me repeat that. The type of the pesticide you're going to be using for the particular farmland or particular pest depends on the pest. So first thing first, inspection is key. You need to follow these 4 guidelines when you are dealing with pests. All right, when you discover the pest in your apartment, the pesticide application comes in as a third step. So after applying the pesticide, the next thing is follow up, or what they call the record keeping. All right, follow up is important. Let me give, for example, record keeping is extremely important, and that's what FarmSpec do. FarmSpec is all about record keeping your records effectively. All right, the pesticide application, you need to take note of where you apply that particular pesticide, and how do you apply it, the method you use, what kind of tool, what kind of equipment do you use. All right, the equipment you use also is also a key determinant in effective pest control. All right, it's a little bit tricky. All right, you need to understand the tool that you're going to be using effectively when it comes to pest control. All right, even on the farmland. All right, there are different tools. You have the backpack sprayer, you have the ULV, you have the foggy machine. All right, all those things need to be well understood, properly understood, before you can actually deal with the pest. And again, the sanitation is important. Like I said, these are the key things that you need to also take note of. First is the pest aborage site. Where are they staying? When you look at the outside, first thing first, when you're looking at inspection, all right, let's take a gradually look at the inspection phase. All right, look at the exterior first, the housing. Like I said, the housing is the most important thing. Housing is the most important thing when you are dealing with farm pest or probably farmland generally. All right, the housing is important. Where are you keeping this particular? Even on the piggery farming, fish farming, poultry farming, a lot of things like that. You need to first understand the housing. Where are you storing them? All right, even snail farming, fantastic. Snail farming, you need to actually understand the housing. Now, when we look at the pest aborigine, where are they hiding? All right, is the environment sustainable for them? Under your objects, do you have something lying under the object, or probably objects lying under the ground, or you check the ground? Let's say, for example, we look at snail farm. All right, if you look at the outside, in a snail farm, you need to actually put what they call a gutter. A gutter needs to go around the snail farm to prevent ant invasion, because the ants are actually in the soil. All right, that's by the way. Snail farming, you need to actually look at from the outside. All right, you look at the garbage system, the exterior. This is the exterior. Look at the garbage system, the storage. How are you storing your waste, your trash? How are you storing them? You need to take note of that. Blow flies, for example, as a case study. Those blow flies they survive in the garbage area. All right, look at your proper drainage. Is the drainage okay? Is it fantastic? Is it moving, or are they static? You need to look at them because they can actually breed mosquitoes. They can breed flies. All right, stagnant. Yeah. So you need to also look at the weed control. Uh, Birds are actually, they get chiggers. Chiggers as a particular pest, for example, they get it from grass. You need to look at your weeds. You need to control the weeds. Look at the exterior aspect. And this particular weeds also makes the environment sustainable for rodents to invade the environment. It makes it sustainable for insects to hide. It makes it sustainable for flies. There are different flies because flies are actually, they feed on pollens from plants. All right. So you need to look at all those things. The perimeter rodent control. We call it the exclusion practice. You need to pest proof the exit and the entry points of your farmland or your housing. Where are all these pests coming from? Where are they going to? How are they coming into the environment? You need to look at the entry and the exit points. If you can get the entry and exit points, then fantastic, you have a solution already. All right. So it's not until you put in chemicals in the facility that you have the control. All right. The control starts from now. We call it a proactive pest management. You have to be proactive when you're dealing with pests. You don't need them to be there before you start taking control. All right, it's just like, for example, someone that is infected with corona, all right, and is now using nose masks after the infection. It's the nose mask is of no use, all right, but it's of use not to transfer to another person, all right, but to him personally, it's of no use. All right, so you need to also take note of the sanitation before the pests arrive. So we also have interior areas. The interior areas involves the walls and the floor maintenance. All right, the floor maintenance, are they clean? The cracks and the crevices, are they sealed up? All right, if you can notice that this particular place is open, you need to seal it up. You need to get sealants to seal it up. Check for leakages in the ceilings, all right, because there are different pests that actually can come from different ways. All right, so you need to check for leakages in the ceilings. Check the pipes if there are no waters that are leaking, and also rodent proof. Make sure that they are rodent proof, because rodents pass through pipes into the environment. Rodents invade environments due to the pipes, all right? And also lightning, the lights that you're using in your farmland, do they attract insects or they repel them? All right, you need to understand the type of the lights they're supposed to be using in your environment, in your farmland. All right, the doors also. The doors, are they shut tightly? I'm going to give you an example, and what you need to actually, practical example, what you need to do right now as you are listening is that take a torchlight. Get a torchlight. You can use your phone torchlight. All right. Let me turn on my own. You can use your mobile torchlight, or probably your torchlight. Just get a torchlight and just put it underneath your door. Put it directly underneath your door like this, and just when you just close the door and go and check it from outside. If you can see the light passing through, if you can see the light passing through the door, then any insect, any pest can actually pass through that place. All right. You can also do that if your door is actually closed. Check from inside and check if the sun ray is actually passing through. Same as your windows. Same as the windows. If the sun rays are actually passing through the sides and the edges of the windows, or probably the doors, then any pest, ants, cockroaches, lice, ticks, a lot of them, everything, even rodents can even pass through. All right. So your interior, you need to take note of all these points, because that's where the control starts from before you can actually deal with the pest using chemical method. You need to first understand the sanitation and inspect the place. Then another thing is the storage. How are you storing your materials, your feeds, the feeds of each of all these birds? How are you storing them? All right. How are they stored? Are they stored close to the walls? All right. Next slide. Are they spewed? Those spewed feeds. All right. Are they cleaned immediately? All right. Segregation of damaged foods. We need to also look at that. Like, where are they stored? The blowflies, for example, they love all this they love the storage areas. You see them on the manure, you see them on the carcasses. Empty containers, how do you dispose them? All right. You need to have, in fact, it's stated that your waste bins should be stored at least 10 meters away from the main building. Not even the house, but the main building. The main building, you need to store them 10 meters away from the main building, because they attract, because all these pests get into the apartments as a result of food, shelter, and water, and they can perceive from far location. All right, so that's why you can see rodents who pass through the pipings of your apartment to get inside your own apartment, because they can actually perceived, they can actually perceive this particular pest from different location. All right, and also now when you have actually determined, you have done all the sanitation process, and you are still discovering that okay, this particular pests are actually still coming in, then we now go into the control methods. All right, so we have four major control methods. We have the cultural control method, we have the mechanical method, we have the biological method, and we have the chemical method. All right, when we look at the chemical method, that's the application of pesticides. All right, we look at the application of pesticides on the housing, maybe the perimeter of the housing. Right, there are different pesticides that can actually be used on the farmlands, like the perimeters of the farmlands. All right, when you talk about weed control, they are herbicides. When you talk about rodent control, they are rodenticides, they are baits. All right, that's the cultural method. So you can actually use the mechanical method, use baiting to control the pest. All right, use exclusion practice All right, all those things are part of the control methods. The biological method now, the biological method is you using a particular pest, a pest that you know that this is a pest, to control another pest. All right, that's the biological method. All right, for example, you can actually use what do you call this particular pest? Let me remember this pest. You can actually use the wasp. Yes, wasp. The wasp to control the flies. All right. So all these things are actually very, very important. You can use the wasp. Yeah, wasp to control flies. All right. So all these things are really important. You necessarily don't need to start applying chemicals in your farmland. But when you are using the biological method, you know a lot of farmers can actually use all these methods all together. But this is it. When you are dealing with pests using biological control, please take note of the fact that you should not apply chemical method in that process, because the chemical method can actually kill that particular pest, all right, and render the biological method ineffective. All right, so you need to take note of that particular point also. Then also, when we are looking at pesticides application, there are guidelines that you need to take note of. Like I said, you need to first look at the sanitation of the environment. I laid more emphasis on sanitation, inspection, and also habitat alteration. All right, you need to first take note of that. If you take note of that, then you can have an effective result. We call it integrated pest management. So integrated pest management is the best strategy in terms of controlling pests in the farm. All right, the less of pesticide, because the pesticide have or even have a long-term effect or residual effect to the farmland. All right. So we also next slide, please. All right. So please take note of these points. A pesticide can protect animals from pests, but next slide. Pesticides can protect animals from pests, but may be toxic to the animals. All right, being treated as well as to the pests. All right, so apply them correctly. Please take note of this. Apply them correctly to prevent adverse effects. Animals may be sensitive to certain pesticides. You need to understand the pesticides that you are using. You need to understand what we call the labeling, all right, of this particular pesticide that you are using at the farm. You need to understand the label, and please follow the label recommendation closely and the time intervals for you to apply it. So you can't apply permethrin now and apply another particular active ingredient again at that particular thing. Sometimes it affects resistance. All right, you can look at resistance in terms pesticide resistance to change chemical resistance to change the type of pesticide you're going to be using and all. But please understand the recommendations and the label instructions closely. Uh, yeah, so that's the major things that needs to be well understood when you are dealing with pests on the farmland. Thank you. So, open to questions and answers. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Babalola.
Yeah, thank you,
We
sir.
really enjoyed that lecture. I've learned a few new things today. So I've been
Thank you,
hearing
sir.
about pest infestation, pest control. I've heard about it, but today I've been able to notice some points from what you said. For instance, you said the practice should be proactive, the pest management should be proactive,
Yeah,
and when it comes to application should be determined by the type of pest.
first.
Okay, before I think we may have some questions to ask you. So let's look for questions, please. First, okay, okay, Dr. Muhammad, Dr. Muhammad. We get back to you. We get back to you through your mail. Talks about the slides and okay, okay. Mr. Babalola,
Yes,
when
sir.
it comes to controlling pests, what if do these pests? You know, just like we humans, sometimes when we try to treat some kind of disease or malaria, our body system sometimes may get used to something and the drugs will not work. But it also happens to pest when we apply some applications and then it stop working.
Yes, they call it pesticide resistance or chemical resistance. Um, for example, let me take bedbug as a case study. Bedbug also affects. Sorry, I'm going to talk about bedbug because that's actually the pest that actually focus more of my energy in. If you check my Instagram page, you discover that most of the 90% of the jobs that I do is bedbug control, and bedbug is actually one of the hardest pests to actually control, in the sense that they gain resistance to pesticide easily. They are very resistant to pesticides easily. And the process of you repeating this particular pesticides all the time, all right, repeating it all the time, it affects the pest. All right, it makes them extreme. It makes their skin. They call it if you look at the skin of eggs of bedbug, we call it the cocoon. It makes it extremely strong that the pesticide cannot be able to penetrate into it. So in that case, the harder the skin, all right, the lesser the effectiveness of the pesticides on them, on that particular pest. All right, so you can keep on using that particular pesticide, and it's not going to be working. All right, there's this particular pesticide that people are usually used to. You know, when they want to do pest control, they call you out. Ah, if you don't agree to my pricing, I would rather go and use this particular pesticide. I don't want to call the name. All right, but you know the pesticide I'm talking about. All right, so when they use this particular thing and they just come back to you and tell you that I used it before and it's not working, I don't understand. Like the problem still persists. All right, this is as a result of chemical resistance. So in this kind of case, you need to change the pesticides. You need to change the pesticides effectively. Let's say you are using a particular pesticide right now. For example, you're using permethrin active ingredient. You need to check the active ingredients. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. The AI, they call it the AI. You need to check the active ingredients. If you're using permethrin right now, you need to change it to carbamate. You need to change the organophosphate. You need to look at pyrethroids. You need to look at all these things. But first thing first, you need to first understand that this particular pesticide I'm going to be using, irrespective of the fact that you want to change the pesticide, you want to change the active ingredient, you need to first look at the fact that this particular active ingredient is capable of killing the particular pest. All right. So the most important thing is first is sanitation and habitat alteration before you can do chemical control. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's one thing I'll note. He said it happens and then it's necessary to change the pesticides when that happens. Call it chemical resistance.
Yes.
Thanks for this enlightening session. Thank you, Moradike. Thank you for the comments. Okay, let's see if we have another questions to ask from here. Okay, so add nine again. Okay, we'll get back to that. All right, thank you. Mr. Babalola, please can you,
Yes,
in
sir.
a minutes or two, talk about what you do and how we can also contact your services?
Okay. My name is Sofu Babarola, and what we do basically is the effective, we call it professional pest management. When we talk about pest control, we talk about weed control. And we are not just limited to a particular pests, even though our major niche, all right, is like bedbug treatment, all right, but we are literally not just focused on just a single pest. We treat for other pests too, weeds. We get to farmlands. We treated for snail farms. We've done weed controls, a lot of weed controls. Um, so we do weed controls. We do pest controls generally. We treat for different pests depending on the infestation level. And then what we assure our clients is that we're going to give you back your sleepless nights, and we're going to restore back your sleepless nights and then ensure that you continue to sleep without worries. What we do basically is to ensure that each of our clients are actually sleeping or in their own environment or staying in their environment without worries about the pest invasion or probably the pest infestation in their own apartments or even on the farmland. All right, so we work with farmers too. work effectively. We work with a couple of farmers in Ibadan, in Lagos, all right? We work with snail farm, all right? We work with a lot of farmers in terms of getting rid of snail, pests that affect the farmlands, all right? In terms of weed control, in terms of pests, insect pests generally, right? So those are the things that we do. We just make sure that we ensure that you have your sleepless nights restored back and ensure that you sleep without worries. Same as the pests, same as the animals too. We ensure that they sleep and have a wonderful night's rest without worries. That's what we do at SB Fumigation Services. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Obarela. We really appreciate you for having you. Thanks for the wonderful sessions. It was educating and it was enlightening. I remember Mr. Obarela talked about record keeping. It's also necessary when you want to control pests in the environment, in your farm environment. It's interesting to know that fast peak technology also have a solution that is designed for record keeping, your bookkeeping, your management practices, and every other details regarding your farm environment. In fact, even your staffs, your records, your stocks for poultry farmers. So please, you can see it on the screen, fastpeak.net/FX manager. And okay, you can also contact us on Telegram at fastpeak and on Instagram at farm_speak, on Facebook at fastpeak technology, on Twitter at fastpeak1, and you can reach us on WhatsApp on +234-816-765-7384, and on LinkedIn at fastpeak technology. So we really appreciate you, our listeners. You can see some of the comment there. Thank you so much. Oh, Mr. Abayola, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, please, I just saw a question now. That should be
Okay.
an over, that should be an oversight from me. How do
Okay.
you carry out this inspection? Can our eyes capture this pest?
Oh, definitely, definitely. When you are looking at inspection, first thing first, when we go out, when we have uh, requests for jobs, we go for inspection. All right, we look at the place. We look at the place that's actually infested, and what you need in inspection generally is your headlamp. I'm not with mine here. You need the headlamp, your headlamp to see very well where these pests are actually hiding. You can see it with your eyes like this because these pests are visible, except if you are dealing with microorganisms that you cannot see. Right? But even with microorganisms, you start seeing the effect on the birds. If you're talking about poultry farm, all right, if you're talking about poultry farm as a case study, you start seeing this effect of microorganisms on the birds, the ectoparasites or the endoparasites. You start seeing the effect on the birds. Probably they are sick or restless or tired or something. You start seeing this. Okay, there's possibility that this particular bird is actually infested with this particular endoparasite, or if it's even ectoparasite like the lice or mites. If you check the feathers, because the feathers is where the mites or the ticks, all right, actually stay or survive in. All right, they survive at the feathers area. Right, so you need to check the birds effectively, and look at their body. Look at their body. You can be able to see all those things. I think in the slide, I hope the slides will actually be shared out to everyone, so you can see the pictures, or you can just Google and see pictures of lice, mites, ticks, and bed bugs. All right, so you can see their species are extremely different from each and every one of them. Even the flies. All right, you can maybe expect if you look at your environment. Look at flies, for example. Like I said earlier, look at your environment. Your environment makes it sustainable for them. All right. Most of all these insects, they don't like heat. Some of them don't like cold weather. All right. You need to look at your environment at a particular time. I need to check it correctly. You need to check it every single time, every single day. So it's not a matter of doing it now and leaving it for the next few months before you can start taking note of the pest. So you need to inspect. You can be able to see with your own eyes and see that this is teeth, this is lice. If you start seeing that this particular thing is not related to this particular organism that you are feeding or you are dealing with, then that thing is a pest. All right. So a pest is not a pest because of what they are, but because of what they do. All right. So if you start seeing that, okay, this bird or this particular your birds are restless or they can't eat, they can't drink, then you can start noticing that okay, I think there's something disturbing this particular birds from taking this particular action. So that's where inspection comes in, and you can easily see the pest with your own eyes, except microorganisms. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. It does. Thank you. Thank you. I was trying to take some notes regarding that. Yes, it's possible for us to capture some of these pest microorganisms. So you can see their eggs, you can notice them from the body of the birds. It's
Yes.
notice the points. Thank you, Mr. Babalola. We are so grateful for doing justice to that about pest and infestation control. Yes, pest
Yeah.
infestation has been one of the major problems that poultry farmers and also other farmers face, and it cause great loss. We hope to apply this, and you can also see that some of our listeners from this comment, those who are farmers and intending ones, will also apply that. Thank you. So you can sign up on FS Manager for free. I forgot to mention that earlier. Fastpick.net/FS Manager. You can sign up for free and you can take records of your farming activities. It is possible. That's why FastPick wants you to improve your productivity. It is possible. So thank you everyone for having us. We hope to see you some other time. If you are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit the notification bell and also subscribe to the channel. We have lots of programs like this still coming up for our benefit. We hope to see you some other time. Do enjoy the rest of your day and bye for now.